He had constructed skyscrapers, managed empires, and served as President of the United States. Yet Donald Trump was unprepared for his son praying for his soul, a moment that would forever alter how you see him. The White House never truly rests. Even at 1:43 a.m., fluorescent lights hum over silent corridors, the soft clack of guards' shoes echoes on polished marble, and someone, somewhere, is still reviewing polling data. But in the private residence, behind heavy doors that separate the president from the world, a different silence reigns, not peaceful, not serene, but detached. Donald Trump stood in the hallway, holding a glass of half-melted ice water, staring at a framed photo from his campaign, a younger, sharper, hungrier version of himself smiling, thumbs up, surrounded by a sea of signs and red hats. He felt heavy tonight, not tired, though he rarely admitted that to himself, just waiting. Melania was out of town, attending a diplomatic event in Eastern Europe. Ivanka was in New York. Don Jr. hadn't texted in days. Eric had called that morning about a business deal, but Trump hadn't listened closely enough to recall the details. And Barron was upstairs, presumably asleep. Over the past year, the boy had grown taller, older in more than just height. He didn't argue or ask for much, he just nodded a lot now, shrugged, and disappeared into his room after dinner. Trump had grown used to this behavior but never comfortable with it. He took a sip from his glass, the ice clinking softly, and turned to head back to his study. That's when he heard it, faint, a voice. His first instinct was irritation. Was a staff member talking too loudly? A call left on speaker? He moved closer to the hallway leading to Barron's room. The voice again, low, hushed. A whisper. Then Trump recognized it. It was Barron, not on the phone, not watching a video. He was praying. Trump's breath caught. He stood there, one hand on the cold brass doorknob, but he didn't turn it or knock. He just listened. Inside, the boy knelt by his bed, hands clasped tightly, not in the performative way Trump remembered from church photo ops. This wasn't polished, it was raw. God, Barron said softly, I don't know if you hear me, but I think maybe you do. I think you still care about people, even when they stop caring about you. A pause. Trump's knuckles tightened on the knob. I know I'm not supposed to ask for things just for myself, so I won't. But I want to ask for my dad. Another pause, longer. Trump stared at the door's wood grain as if it might collapse. He says he's strong, but I don't think he is. I think he's just tired of people not knowing the difference between who he has to be and who he really is. Trump's gaze locked on the door, unblinking. Please help him feel loved. Help him see he doesn't always have to win, that it's okay to lose sometimes, to be human. A deep breath. And if he's forgotten how to cry, could you remind him? Trump stepped back silently. He didn't want to hear more, not because it was wrong, but because it was too much. Because the words weren't meant for him. Because they touched something in him that hadn't been touched in years. He returned to his study without a word, sat at his desk, and stared into space. For the first time in a long while, Donald Trump felt something rise in his chest that had nothing to do with anger, ambition, or pride. It was shame. The next morning, the president skipped his usual call to his communications team. He ignored the Fox News broadcast. When Marcus brought the daily intelligence briefing, Trump waved him off. Later, instead, he opened the bottom drawer of his desk. Inside was a small leather-bound book his mother had given him, a Bible, aged and stiff at the spine, with "Donald" inscribed in faded cursive. May you never forget where true strength comes from, your loving mother. He hadn't opened it in years, maybe decades. He flipped it open to no particular page, his eyes landing on a verse from 2 Corinthians, My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Weakness, a word he'd spent his life avoiding, rejecting, sidestepping anything that might make him seem less. Yet last night, his son had asked for nothing but for his father to be allowed to feel again. At lunch, he met an aide in the West Wing conference room. The aide began discussing approval ratings. Trump cut him off. "Oh," he said, surprised. "Mind if I join you?" Barron paused. "For what?" "Lunch." The boy stepped aside. They sat on a couch, eating in silence for a while, not awkwardly, just quietly. After a few bites, Trump said, "Did you ever pray before dinner?" Barron glanced at him. "Sometimes." Trump nodded. "Back when I was your age, my mother made me." Barron gave a small smile. Trump cleared his throat. Do you talk to God a lot?" "Sometimes." "Last night," Trump began, then stopped. A long pause. Barron looked up. "You heard me." Trump nodded slowly. "I didn't mean to. I was just passing by." Barron sat still, silent. "I didn't know you felt that way," Trump added. More silence. Finally, Barron said, "You never ask." Trump didn't respond immediately, didn't defend himself, didn't raise his voice. He just looked at his knees and said, almost too quietly, "Do you think I'm strong?" "I think you're tired," Barron replied. "And lonely." Trump nodded again, then whispered, "Me too." That evening, he sat alone in the Oval Office, the lights dimmed, the staff gone. For the first time in years, he closed the door, sat on the floor, and prayed, not eloquently, not confidently, just honestly. "I don't know if you hear me, but I think you might. And I think maybe I forgot what being strong really means." His voice broke, but he continued. Donald Trump wasn't a man accustomed to silence. His world had always been filled with noise, jets, boardrooms, screaming headlines, applause, criticism, chaos, arguments, interviews. Even his private thoughts rarely came quietly, they arrived like marching orders, sharp, demanding, loud. But after hearing Barron's prayer, something in him shifted, quietly, subtly. It showed first in what he didn't say. At the morning security briefing, he skipped his usual barrage of sarcasm and pointed questions. He just listened, asking only one question about civilian safety in conflict zones, something unexpected, something uncharacteristically human. Marcus, his chief of staff, raised an eyebrow but said nothing. By lunchtime, Trump was back in his private study. Aides brought his favorite fast food, but he barely touched it. Instead, he reopened the leather Bible, his mother's handwriting on the inside cover, his hand tracing the words. He turned to the Psalms, reading a few lines before pausing. Slowly, he closed the book. His reflection in the window revealed a man who appeared, if only slightly, less certain than the one described in yesterday's headlines. That day, Barron entered his study, not summoned, but because the guards had relayed that his father wanted to see him when he had a moment, a rare occurrence. As Barron stepped in, Trump stood before a framed newspaper clipping from 1983, capturing the groundbreaking of Trump Tower, his hair perfect, his smile polished. "I was younger there," Trump muttered. Barron glanced at him. "Yeah." Trump turned to him. "Were you serious? What you said in your prayer?" Barron blinked. "All of it." Trump nodded slowly. Barron sat, crossing one leg over the other. "Was I wrong?" he asked. "No," Trump replied quietly. "That's the worst part." They spoke, not for long, but longer than usual. Trump didn't lecture or scold, he listened. When Barron mentioned sometimes missing his mother, recalling times they were both at dinner together, Trump nodded and said, "Me too." When Barron asked if he'd always wanted to be president, Trump hesitated. "No," he admitted. "I wanted to be remembered." Barron leaned forward. "Do you?" "I don't know yet." That evening, Trump canceled a scheduled Fox News appearance without giving a reason. He stayed home, walking the residence corridors, pausing at the family portraits lining the staircase landing. He studied a photo of himself holding a young Barron on a beach, his hands tanned, eyes clearer. Something cracked in his chest, not quite pain, something softer. Regret, perhaps, or longing. He didn't run from it, he let it linger. The next day, Trump asked Marcus to arrange a private meeting with the White House chaplain. No press, he added. And I don't want cameras sniffing around. Marcus blinked. May I ask why? No, Trump replied, then, after a pause, added, but it's not for optics. It's personal. The chaplain, a reserved man in his 60s, wore a simple suit and spoke with the gentleness of someone who'd seen grief more often than power. They sat in the rose garden under a large umbrella table. Trump spoke little at first, then asked if people ever truly change. The chaplain smiled softly. Only when they let in something bigger than themselves. Trump tapped his fingers on the table. What if you've built your whole life on not doing that? Then it takes more courage, the chaplain replied. But the door's still open. Trump nodded, looking down. Do you pray, Mr. President? The chaplain asked. Trump stared at his hands. I've said some things, he replied. As a kid, Mom made us pray at night, but I don't know if I ever meant it. He hesitated. Until last night. Later, alone in his room, Trump opened a drawer and pulled out a blank notebook. He began writing, slowly, with more effort than usual. Not a speech, not a tweet, but a letter to Barron. You see more than I thought. And you reminded me of something I was afraid to admit, that strength isn't the same as noise. I don't know how to work in silence, but I want to try. Thank you for believing in someone who forgot how to listen. He folded the paper, slipped it into an envelope, and left it on Barron's nightstand that evening after the boy had fallen asleep, like a prayer, unnoticed. But Donald Trump wasn't planning to change, not at first, even after hearing his son pray for him through a closed door. That moment didn't fade, though. It lingered, like a whisper in the hallway, a weight he'd forgotten he carried. Something had shifted, not in his strategies, but in his soul, and he didn't know what to do with it. The next day, he made a rare call to his sister, Marianne. They hadn't spoken in nearly 6 months, their conversations growing shorter, more formal, more performative over the years. But something in him needed to hear the voice of someone who knew him when he was just Donnie from Queens. She answered, surprised. Well, she said dryly, either the market's crashing, or you're finally tired of steak. I'm checking in, Trump replied. That shock you? Marianne paused. Honestly, it does, she said. But it's not unwelcome. They talked for nearly 30 minutes, no headlines, no soundbites, just memories. He asked about their mother. What would she think of me now? Marianne didn't rush her answer. She'd be proud of your fight, she said finally. But she'd worry about your heart. He didn't respond. She used to sit on the edge of your bed at night, Marianne added. Remember? Trump blinked. I was always asleep when she came. No, Marianne said softly. You just pretended to be. That evening, Trump found himself on a garden path behind the White House, alone. He stopped under a blooming magnolia and, for reasons he couldn't explain, whispered aloud, Are you listening now? He looked at the dark sky, not expecting an answer, just wanting to be heard. Back inside, Barron found the letter his father had left on his nightstand the previous night. He read it once, then again, then folded it and tucked it into a book on his shelf. He didn't run to his father, didn't write about it, didn't even mention it at breakfast. But when Trump entered the room the next morning, Barron looked up from his cereal and said, You misspelled, believe. Trump smiled. No, I didn't. Barron grinned. You did. And for the first time in months, they laughed together. Later that week, Trump held a small closed-door meeting with military veterans and their families. Typically, these events were ceremonial, photos, handshakes, a few words from a podium. But this time, he asked everyone to sit, and he listened. A woman shared how she lost her husband to suicide after his 3rd deployment. Trump asked her name twice, said it aloud, and wrote it in a small notebook he hadn't used since the campaign. Another man spoke of losing a leg in Iraq. "I still dream with both legs," he said. Trump nodded slowly. "That's a hell of a line," he replied. When the event ended, he didn't rush out. He stayed, sitting in a corner of the room while others lingered in quiet reflection. An aide asked if he was okay. Trump waved him off. "Better than okay. Just remembering how to listen." That evening, he visited Barron's room again. The boy was reading. Trump knocked once. "Praying again?" Barron looked up. "Checking again." Trump smiled. "I thought maybe this time we could pray together." Barron blinked. "Really?" Trump nodded. "Really?" They knelt by the bed, awkward at first. Trump cleared his throat. "You first." Barron closed his eyes. "Thanks for today. And thanks for my dad trying. Please help him not stop, even when it's hard. And thanks for him being brave enough to try in front of me." Trump swallowed hard, then added quietly, "And thank you for my son, for his honesty, and for not giving up on me, even when I deserved it." A long pause followed. Barron whispered, "Amen." Trump echoed, almost inaudibly, "Amen." Back in his study, Trump sat at his desk and glanced at the 1983 photo again. Then he turned it face down, pulled out a fresh page from his notebook, and began writing something new, a letter, this time not to Barron, but to someone he hadn't spoken to in years, his brother, Fred, who had passed decades ago, lost to addiction and inner demons Trump never knew how to confront. The letter wasn't meant to be sent, it was for himself, a way to speak into the silence. "I didn't understand you then, but I think I'm starting to now. I wish I could go back. I wish I'd prayed with you the way my son prays for me. I didn't know what love looked like when it was quiet. I do now. Forgive me." He folded the letter, tucked it into the back of the Bible, closed it carefully, and sat in the stillness, a stillness he no longer feared. The following Friday, Barron was set to head to New York for the weekend to spend time with his mother. But that morning, Trump changed the plan. He called his chief of staff and cleared his entire schedule: no meetings, no press, no briefings, just a single line sent through secure private channels. The press pool went silent for 36 hours, no details on his whereabouts, no photos. Then he walked down the hall to Barron's room, knocked softly, and opened the door. Barron looked up from his laptop, surprised. "You packed yet?" Trump asked. "I thought Mom was coming. She's still in New York, but I thought maybe we could take a little trip first, just us." Barron tilted his head. "Where?" Trump hesitated, then offered a faint smile. "You'll see." 3 hours later, a black SUV pulled away from the White House, no flags, no escort, no fanfare, just a father and son sitting side by side in the back seat. Barron didn't ask many questions, he just watched the road signs. As the city faded behind them, the sky opened up, wide and blue, with the greenery of the countryside stretching in every direction. An hour passed, then 2, then 3. Finally, the driver turned off the highway onto a quiet street in Jamaica Estates, Queens. Barron sat forward. "Wait, is this where you grew up?" Trump nodded slowly. The car stopped in front of a modest 2-story brick house, his childhood home, barely changed since 1954. He stepped out and stared at it for a long moment before speaking. "I used to climb out that window when I didn't want to go to church," he murmured. Barron raised an eyebrow. "Did you get caught?" "Once," Trump admitted. "My mother didn't say anything. She just handed me a Bible and said, 'If you're going to skip church, at least talk to God on your own.'" Barron chuckled. "She always knew how to guilt-trip with grace." They stood in silence for a few minutes. Then Trump pointed to the sidewalk. "I used to sit right here with your Uncle Fred. He had a harmonica, played it terribly, drove me crazy. Did you like him? Trump lowered his eyes. I didn't know how to. They walked further down the street. At one point, they passed an old Presbyterian church. Its doors were locked, but the building stood just as Trump remembered, red brick, ivy curling around the stained glass. Still reaching for the sky. He stood on the steps, a hand on the railing. I was baptized here, he said. But I don't remember the sermons. What do you remember? Barron asked. Trump paused, then said, shoes. Barron looked confused. My father's shoes, Trump clarified. Polished, shiny. I kept staring at them instead of the preacher. Barron nodded, unsure what to say. They walked on, eventually reaching a small diner, one of the few places from Trump's childhood that still stood. He gestured to a booth by the window. Come on. They sat, and for a while, they didn't talk about politics, faith, or legacy. They just ordered grilled cheese and milkshakes, like people, not headlines. After lunch, Trump took Barron to a cemetery. The driver stayed in the car. They stood together before the headstone of Marianne McLeod Trump, Donald's mother. The stone was clean, the grass freshly mowed. Barron looked down at it, then at his father. Did you talk to her? He asked. Trump cleared his throat. Once, after the election. He hesitated. Not since. Barron watched him, uncertain what he saw. Trump placed a hand gently on the headstone and whispered, I think I forgot how to be small. But I'm remembering now. I heard your voice in my son's. He'd have liked you. Barron stood still, and for the first time in his life, he saw his father wipe away a tear in complete silence. No one filmed it. No one would ever know. But it happened, and it mattered. That evening, they returned to Washington. The next morning, there were no headlines, no press leaks, but something had shifted between them. That Sunday, Barron asked if they could attend church together. Trump paused, then smiled. Only if you let me pick the hymn. Barron grinned. You don't know any hymns. Then I'll make one up. And for the first time in a long, long while, they laughed as if bound by something deeper than blood. This concludes our narrative journey. I trust you found this gripping saga of intrigue, cutting-edge innovation, and astonishing discoveries captivating. From where are you tuning in today? I'm curious to learn which corner of the globe this tale has touched. If this escapade held your interest, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for a steady stream of compelling, mind-expanding stories just like this one. Fresh material is posted frequently, ensuring you're always in the loop for the newest spellbinding adventures. Be sure to pass this video along to your loved ones and friends. It's a great way to share positivity and insight while expanding our circle of story enthusiasts. Your encouragement is invaluable. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to welcoming you back for the next tale.